It is my great pleasure to warmly welcome you all to the third edition of Navaratri e-lecture series, hosted by Center for Educational and Social Studies in collaboration with ICFAI Business School. Today marks the second day of this intellectually enriching journey where we come together to celebrate not just the spirit of Navaratri, but also the timeless wisdom of Bharatiya management. This series is a humble effort to draw from our vast Indic knowledge system to understand how principles rooted in dharma, ethics, and collective well being can provide fresh insights into contemporary management practices. On this occasion, I extend my gratitude to our distinguished speakers for today, Dr. Naveen Bhat and Dr. Vinay Chandra ji, all the knowledge seekers, scholars, students, and other participants who have joined us today to make this learning meaningful and impactful. Your presence is a testimony to the growing interest in blending traditional wisdom with modern management thought. Now, as we step into the second day of deliberation, let us begin our session with Dr. Naveen Bhat on the lecture titled Dialogue, Discourse, and Darshana, the Indian Way of Communication. Dr. Naveen Bhat is an assistant professor from the School of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, Chanakya University, Bengaluru. He has earned his doctoral degree in Paninian Grammar from Central Sanskrit University. He has served for nearly a decade as assistant professor at Amrita Darshanam International Center for Spiritual Studies, Coimbatore. He has made significant contributions to teaching, research publication, and worked on funded projects while also engaging actively in popular writing. I think he regularly contributes to Kannada dailies, magazines, and periodicals. He has authored 5 books in Kannada and 1 in English. And as a translator, he has worked across Kannada, English, and Sanskrit with notable efforts such as the Kannada adaptation of Vyakarana uh, Bhushana Sara. It was a funded project from government of Karnataka. With a deep commitment to Indian knowledge systems for contemporary times, Dr. Bhat continues to mentor PhD scholars from India and abroad in the domain of Indian knowledge systems mainly. Once again, a very warm welcome to you, Naveen Bhat. Namaste. And before we start the session, a couple of instructions here for the participants. Participants who need the certificate of attendance, I request all of you to attend all the sessions. And the lecture will be for 45 minutes and then there will be a Q&A for 15 minutes. So kindly message me the questions in the Q&A box and we can take that at the end of the session. Okay, over to you.
किरन्ती मङ्गलस्मेरैः कटाक्षैः करुणामृतं समये सन्निधत्तान्मे सूक्तिधेनुः सरस्वती. Namaskaram to one and all present here. I hope I am audible.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
This and it was very insightful series of talks by very eminent scholars. I extend my thanks or gratitude to CES for including me in the list. Though there is a lot for me to learn from the management perspective, but with a little bit exposure to Indian texts and Indian way of communication, I chose to speak on the very idea of Indian way of communication in this series. Uh, we can move to the presentation mode. I will turn off my camera. Just 1 second. I hope the screen is visible.
Yes, Ji, it is visible.
Yeah. So within next 40-45 minutes, we will be dealing with these topics, what you're seeing on screen. Language, Indian works on speech, India and the West, how these two cultures, or these two civilizations thought of language and communication. And then India's
Naveen Bhatji, your audio
contribution in the
is
area
on
of
and off.
dialogue
The
of
audio is
uh,
getting stuck in the middle. Naveen Bhatji, can you hear me?
uh, yeah, I can hear you.
The
Yes.
audio is quite on and off.
Okay. Yeah, I think I received a call from another number, so
Okay.
there was a disturbance in internet connection. Now it must
Okay.
be clear.
Yes, yes. Now it is clear.
Okay, okay. And then if you look into the title, the last portion is Darshana. This is one of the unique contributions of Indic thought to the entire world of communication itself. Across all the civilizations in the past, we have not come across any civilization thinking of language or communication as a darshana or philosophy. So these things largely will be discussing. So without discussing, these things will be discussed. Language, the base of human communication or human life itself, and how language is perceived in India. Because it is very important to understand our civilizational axioms in order to make sense of what kind of communicative methods we developed. And then evolution of communication, India and Europe. Indian approach, dialogue and discourse, just now I emphasized on this. And then Shabda Darshana or linguistic philosophy. Nowadays, modern linguists may be speaking of linguistic philosophy, but India did produce these thoughts at least 2500 years ago from now. So let us set the context first. If you look into the pyramid of evolution, communication is a ubiquitous phenomenon across all the species. I mean, you speak of any species, there is communication across all the species. It is not only human beings who converse or who communicate ideas, but then there is something unique with human beings. All other species, they do communicate the basic things. For them, there are experiments which tell us even chimps or chimpanzee, they also communicate. Let us say a herd of chimpanzee, they are in a forest, and all of a sudden a lion or a tiger appears. They do communicate. The first chimp that gets to know there is a threat, it would communicate in a particular manner. It also distinguishes whether the threat is from a predator or threat is from some natural disaster like wildfire. So this distinction is also possible at chimps. Similarly, with other species also, there is basic mode of communication which serves the purpose of their life. I mean, their very existence. So this is nature's, gift to the species. Communication is the gift of the nature to the species. But then, for human beings, entire life is all about communication. Let's say for chimps and other animals, there is a river, there is a tree, there is a uh, hill, or there is something. Only these things, the world which is of actual things, the world of objects, is the matter of communication. What involves their communication is only these things which are present in the world around. But for human beings, it is not like that. We create our universe, we converse the universe and create our own to live in it, unlike other animals. For example, if you take that very river, tree, forest, and a hill station, human beings can create a story around it. The river flows elegantly, and the breeze is touching the leaves of the tree, and that evening is very fascinating. This is not present for other animals, but for human beings, this virtually created world is present. So, based on the elements that are seen around, human beings create their own universe. And this universe is actualized and communicated and commonly experienced by the people only through conversation or language. We can describe the things, we can create the ideas and communicate them. So, this ability is unique to human beings, that is not present in other species. According to Yuval Noah Harari, perhaps most of the audience today who are present here are aware of this person because of his contribution uh, to the world of humanities. One of the famous books, that is *Sapiens*, where he emphasizes on human ability to speak, human ability of language, human ability to create stories and communicate. According to him, all our ability to speak evolved, shaped, and sharpened through our tendency to tell stories. There is an urge in human beings to tell stories, to create stories and then tell stories. I mean, the entire book *Sapiens*, it carries a very light mood throughout, and he puts it, gossiping is the nature of human beings. If two humans come across, they do gossip, and for this gossip, they need language. So, thus language evolved as the unique quality of humans. So, what we communicate is what we create on our own. It is not only the trees, the leaves, the river, the hill station that we converse. We converse the universe that we create using these elements. That is why our languages, be it any language for that matter, not only of India, but any civilization, language is so rich. India, when it comes to Bharat, there are certain unique features of Indian languages. For example, our languages are highly phonetic. If you take Kannada itself, how phonetic this language is, and linguistic structure also, largely it differs from other languages. So, human conversation richly happens only through the phenomenon called language. We can consider language as a phenomenon, a human phenomenon. Any piece of knowledge that we produced so far in the civilizational history of human species, all this knowledge is codified and communicated only through knowledge. If you look into the past, any piece of knowledge of any domain of any walk of human life, it is codified and communicated only through language, maybe in written form or in spoken form. There is no other means of communicating knowledge. Of course, the devices must have changed. The devices of storing the language information must have changed. And of course, because of technology, it has seen a drastic shift, maybe from manuscripts to cloud storage today. But then, uh, when it comes to human being, when the last product that human being can consume is only in the form of language, because a machine language we cannot understand. So human languages, so language is perceived differently by different civilizations based on their worldview. This is very important. uh, a society's understanding and reverence towards language is highly rooted in the values it has created as a civilization or as a society. For Indians, life is cyclic. This is one of the major worldviews that we ever maintained. When I say we, I do not consider only any particular philosophy. All together, I am calling Indian civilization. And there are commonalities. If we think Buddhism or Jainism are the offshoots of Sanatana, and they came as a revolt against the Sanatana mode of living and all that, that doesn't hold good when you consider this entire Indian darshanas or the Vedika and Avedika school of philosophies as a civilizational production, because there are so many commonalities, and one of them is we consider this life and time as a cyclic one. I mean, if this is not the only life that we are living, this is common across all philosophical schools of India, be it Sanatana or non-Sanatana or so-called non-Vedic, maybe Buddhist or Jain or Sikh or whatever it is. For all these people, life is a repetitive phenomenon. And since it is repetitive, there are certain values that we have woven around our idea of communication and language. That is why in India, the spoken words matter a lot. This used to be in even our legal issues also were used to be sorted out based on spoken words only. But on arrival of the Western thoughts and civilization, our system also changed or and highly got influenced by them. But until then, word which is spoken was, it was frozen one. I mean, you cannot undo it. In Kannada also, even Vachana Sahitya of 12th century, we can see Matu, that holds a very significant role in humans' life. An entire story of Ramayana is all about Matu or spoken words. That is why Rama is called Pitruvakya Paripalaka. Means he, in order to make the words of his father true, went away from his state and entered the forest for 14 years in exile. Entire Ramayana is all about speech. Similarly, when it comes to Mahabharata, these are the two major epics, national epics of this country, or Itihasa Kavyas of this country. Their grounding is on the idea of speech or matu or spoken words. And our entire civilization has maintained it for thousands of years. Words spoken are to be met with, are to be maintained. You find out n number of stories which carry a great emphasis for spoken words. Maybe the story of Satya Harishchandra, or as I mentioned, the story of Ramayana and Mahabharata. So, okay, this has some grounding or rooting in our civilizational understanding or our worldview. One spoken words that, even after this life, one has to pay for it. So one should be extra cautious when he or she speaks. Okay. So for Indic civilization, Vak is a devata, and this is also one of the unique approaches that India ever maintained. We consider there used to be many civilizations earlier where everything surrounding was considered divine or daivika, but because of the advent of different thoughts, most of those civilizations they perished. India, fortunately, even today survives and can. It is now trying to revisit its original thoughts. We consider everything around us and including us as devata. See, Navratra speech series is going on for 9 days. We are going to have these discourses. This very festival called Navaratra also houses this idea of considering everything divine. We have Ayudha Puja at the end of Navaratra, wherein Ayudhas and tools, weapons, are considered to be divine and we offer puja to them. While this is the scenario, while everything around us, including ourselves, is divine, there is no vaichitriya in considering vak or speech itself as devata. That is why we have the idea of vag devata. So, as we see Devata Bhava everywhere, the term referring to language, look at the term referring to language that are present in Indian languages. Brahmi, language is called Brahmi in Sanskrit. Brahmi, Bharati. Most of us we have heard this word Bharati, but the meaning of the word Bharati is either Saraswati or speech. Brahmi, Bharati, Bhasha, of course, Gihi, mm, Vak, Vani, Saraswati, all these terms are in feminine gender. Brahmi to Bharati, Bhasha, Girvag, Vani, Saraswati. These are the terms Amarakoshakara in his treatise mentions as the synonyms for speech or language. And all these terms are in feminine gender, and this very festival of Navaratra is all about that. Last 3 days of this Navaratra Parva or the festival of Navaratra are dedicated for this Vagdevata or Saraswati. And veneration towards Vani or Saraswati can be invariably found across various schools of thoughts. Again, there is no barrier, that particular school of philosophy considers Vak as Devata. No, it is not like that. Let us say Vedas. In Vedas, n number of mantras one can find, right, starting from Rig Veda to Atharvana Veda. So many mantras and suktas are dedicated for speech itself. Chatvari Vak Parimita Padani, one of the words from Rig Veda as well as Yajurveda. Or some of the suktas, Vagamrani Sukta, dedicated for Vak. So it is not only for Vedas. When you come to the other literature, or if at all I have to call classical Sanskrit literature, most of the poets, along with the salutations that they offer to their Kuladevata or Ishtadevata, they also offer salutation to Vagdevata. From Kalidasa to Bharavi to any poet you mention, there is a great veneration seen in their works. Even in Kannada, for example, Adikavi Pampa. Pampa belongs to the Jain tradition. In today's frameworks, there was no room for Jaina Kavi to mention of Vagdevata, but he has done. If you look into the works of Pampa, explicitly he has mentioned, he has showed his reverence to Vagdevata. Even 20th century works like that of Ramayana Darshanam of Kuvempu, it is not only at the beginning, whenever Kuvempu felt like his work is not progressing much, his poetic work is, hammered by some outer circumstances, he would pray to Vagdevata. He has coined beautiful terms for Vagdevata in Kannada. For example, he calls Saraswati as Nudiven. Nudi in Kannada stands for speech, and hen or pen or ven. Nudiven, a stree devata dedicated for speech. So, this practice of venerating Vagdevata can be seen across the literature. So, we are the people who cherish the spoken form of language rather than the written ones. That is why we have the parampara of Shruti. Shruti means Vedas. Vedas are also called as Shabdas. And the parampara of Veda, the knowledge of Veda transmitted from generations to generations, even today, it is transmitted from generation to generation through oral tradition. That is where we use the term anuvada. Even today, in today's context, we use the term anuvada for translation. Uh, in actual sense, anuvada is when a ring mantra or any mantra is uttered by the guru. If it is repeated by the student, I mean, it has to be repeated by the student, in the process of learning, and that repeated version of mantra is called anuvada. What guru does is vada, and student takes it or repeats it is anuvada. So this Vadanuvada Parampara is what we venerated, is what we maintained all across. So then we will try to understand what are the works that Indians have done, what are the thought frames that Indians have produced for speech. Earlier in the previous bubble, I mentioned a mantra, Chatvari Vak Parimita Padani, one of the mantras from Rig Veda and Yajurveda. Of course, this mantra appears in both the Vedas. There is one understanding of four levels of speech. Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama, Vaikhari. It mentions only the fourth one, um, that is Vaikhari. Four layers of speech which are inherent for human beings. Para, the second one Pashyanti, third one is Madhyama, and fourth one is Vaikhari. What you are hearing now, what I am speaking now, is the Vaikhari sound. Vaikhari sound. Para is Pandashonya. If in the audience, some of us must have gone through the words of Lalita Sahasranama, during this Navaratra. There comes reference for these four stages of speech. Para pratyakchiti rupa pashyanti paradevata madhyama vaikhari rupa. This goes on, in Lalita Sahasranama mantras. So para is that speech which is spanda shunya, I mean, which is not moving at all. one does not have direct access to it, which is, in a dormant stage in normal human or common human beings like us, who have not done much sadhana. That is para, but that is the source, that is the very core of our speech. Second one is pashyanti, where speech has got some split as dhatu and pratyaya, or prakriti and pratyaya. This is another unique contribution India has made in understanding the structure of language or conversation. That elements of this language or conversation or communication have two big, are classified into two as prakriti and pratyaya. Prakriti is the base, the original padarupa, the form of word, and pratyaya is an addendum or suffix. In the Pashyanti level of speech, this classification can be noticed, Prakriti and Pratyaya. Madhyama Vak, where Prakriya happens, the Vakya or the sentence gets formulated. And then Vaikhari is the ultimate sound that we utter. Actual speech is not in the form of sound. The speech is in the form of para. When we think of saying something, it is very quick process. In order to respond to somebody or in order to express our thoughts, the speech is in very subtle form before it is getting the shape of sentence. When it becomes sentence, when we utter it, it is vaikhari shabda. But this vaikhari is only appearance. What is the real nature of the language is pararupa. Okay, the Shakti Upasakas and Sadhakas, Sri Chakra Upasakas often come across these terms, and they do sadhana on Parapashyanti Madhyama and Parapashyanti and Madhyama. Their goal is to reach the level of Para, wherein, uh, for them, language is not required for meaning. For us, language is required for meaning. Okay, then this is one of the major contributions that India made in the domain of communication or in the domain of understanding speech. Second one, Vedas are Shabda Rupas. Shabda is words and sound. Shabda can be translated into two as words and sound. both Dhvani Rupa and Shabda Rupa. So Dhvani Rupa and Pada Rupa. Since Vedas are called Shabdas, or it is all about language, there are 50% of the limbs of Veda are dedicated for discussing various components of the language itself. For example, Shiksha. There are 6 limbs of Veda: Shiksha, Vyakaranam, Chandas, Nirukta, Jyotisha, and Kalpa. Out of that, 3, Shiksha, Vyakarana, and Nirukta, they deal with the language itself, Bhasha itself. Shiksha, for example, it deals with the phonetic. It speaks of phonetic precision. Because Indian languages are highly phonetically rich, though in today's time, look at our laptop keyboard. We have not we have not devised a keyboard, a laptop keyboard or a computer keyboard which is suitable for Indian languages or its phonetic nature. We have twisted the existing keyboard, which was meant for non-Indian languages initially, that very keyboard we are using for Indian languages as well. It would be a great contribution if somebody comes up with a phonetic keyboard for Indian languages with complete different kind of set in keyboard. Okay, anyway, so Shiksha deals with that phoneticity of languages, and then Vyakarana. All of us know this is grammar. This itself is a major school of thoughts in India, and then Nirukta, which is basically etymology. For every word, Nirukta, I mean, it deals largely with the words of Veda. Nirukta, it deals with the etymology of the word spota. Spota, I mean, in common conversation, spota means, it is a blast or an explosion. But here, idea of spota in Sanskrit grammar it is a philosophical stance. I mean, when a when in during a conversation or communication, how do we understand? How do we get the meaning out of language? In reality, there is no innate connection between language, I mean, words and meaning. Uh, it is not that, for example, the word tree, uh, ability of the word tree is to denote the object called tree, the object called tree with branches, roots, leaves, flowers, fruits, and everything. But then the relationship between this object called tree and the word tree is not the absolute one. If a community makes a decision that they refer to the liquid or water by the word tree, nobody can stop them, right? So they tomorrow onwards for water they may start calling tree. Nothing goes wrong, but when this is the convention we have made by this word tree, this object is referred to, this object is expressed. This is a convention. So there is no innate relationship between the word and its meaning. So the question is, when a sentence is uttered, out of these words, how does the meaning occur? Basically, Spota theory deals with the idea of meaning making. So ultimately, I mean, there are 8 types of Spotas. I will not go into the detail. Ultimate, presentation over there is meaning. Vakyapariya, I mean, the work of Bhartrahari beautifully says, Pade na varna vidyante vakye naiva padani cha vakyat padanam atyantam praviveko na kaschana. That means in a sentence, there are no words. In the words also, there are no components like phonemes or morphemes or varnas or syllables. So that classification or division what we have made, the word is there. In the word there is root form and there is suffix and there's a combination of suffix and the root. This is just a created reality. It is not an actual vastavika reality. It is a created reality. Then when that is not true, and when the words are not true, when the components of the words are not true, how then meaning is conveyed? How then the communication happens? The Spota Siddhanta ultimately says the meaning gets expressed when the sentence is uttered. That is what they call as Vakya Spota. So all the meaning is expressed only through Vakya or a sentence. So the focus is on sentence. Anything that we utter should be a proper sentence. Ask then words do carry meaning. For example, I only gave the example the word tree and its meaning. That is an aropita one. Even in the word, even if somebody says tree, simply tree, the question comes: what happened to tree? Whether a tree has gone, tree fans of Spota Siddhanta. Modern linguists like Saussure, though he does not refer to Panini, but he was teaching Panini grammar in Geneva. He also speaks of the similar idea. Anyway, and then another major contribution India made in the idea of communication is the theory of rasa, wherein there is a trio or a triad: Kavi, Kavya, and Sahradaya. There is one who produce the sentences, who produce the Alankara, who produce the Kavya. He is Kavi or poet. And then Kavya itself, the work that is done by Kavi, Kavehe Karma Kavya. And then, if only these two are completed, there is no circuit that is completed. There should be Sahridaya, one who enjoys, one who relishes this Kavya, and his name is, I mean, he is called Sahridaya. I mean, he has got same wavelength of thinking and ability to receive it and perceive it. He is Sahridaya. Kavi, Kavya, Sahridaya together make a complete conversation or a complete communication. Kavi should be there, his work Kavya should be there, and then Sahridaya should be there. And ultimate goal of all these is to experience rasa. There is a well established theory of rasa, and this is one of the unique Siddhanta, and Rasa Siddhanta are very unique to India. I will not go into details again in because the time is running fast. Okay. And then how Indians and Europeans they looked at communication. In the Greek, communication was largely developed and shaped in the idea of rhetoric in Athens because it was considered to be a civic art and it was core to democracy. They were living in a democratic society, and there, speaking in an effective manner was a requirement for a leader. And that is why rhetoric was considered to be an art, and that art can be developed. I mean, one can get skilled in this particular art form called rhetoric that got developed over there in in the Western world. But they believed in this thing, communication skills can be taught. I mean, those are sophists, language. A leader should be certain skills. This was the idea that they developed, and
Naveen ji,
then they also
sorry.
looked into the moral angles of this rhetorics, because simply dry rhetorics ultimately it will, if it is not carrying truth or if it is not standing by the truth, that rhetoric is useless. Aristotle's rhetoric systemic framework, he speaks of these three things: ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos means the credibility of speaker, who is speaking. Second one is pathos, I mean, emotional appeal. Even today, people get connected to those leaders who maintain these three: ethos, pathos, and logos. It is true in India as well. We have been seeing it in Indian politics if you look into. And then logos, logical reasoning. Logical reasoning, that talk will not hold good. So, rhetoric was institutionalized as art and science in Greco-Roman world. Communication seen as essential to leadership, and it was a moral duty. I mean, a leader should learn how to speak, especially public speech, and maintaining these three: his personality, then emotional ability of his speech, and then logical reasoning in his speech. So these ideas they laid foundation for later communication theories in the West. At the same time, if you come to India, there is no dedicated school of thought or any treatise which speak of rhetoric as such in India. We can cull out these ideas from various sources. For example,
Naveen ji, sorry to interrupt.
for example, Chandrojvala, at the last line it says, Valmika Samalan
Naveen ji,
Karote
can you
Purusham
hear me?
Yasamskrita Dharyate Kshiyante Khalu Bhushanani Satatam Vagbhushanam Bhushanam. Ultimate ornament or embellishment of human being is his speech. If the speech is good, all other ornaments are not really required, and all other ornaments are only objects. They do not carry observe good speech. That itself is great ornamentation. Then there is another beautiful Subhashita, if I can recollect. He jihve katuta snehe madhuram kim na bhashase madhuram vada kalyani lokoyam madhura priya. The world wants to hear good words, sweet words, sweet sweet words, because sweet is what the Subhashitakara, the author of the Subhashita, is addressing the tongue. He jihve katuta snehe. You actually want to taste the spice or the spicy food. Madhuram kim na bhasha se, why can't you produce good speech or sweet speech? Madhuram vada kalyani, speak only good words, speak only sweet words. Lokoyam madhura priya, because the world relishes sweet. Then priyavakya pradhanena sarve tushyanti jantavaha. All the beings, they enjoy terms of other things. But nobody stops somebody from being rich, at least in speech. So, if you go into the works of great authors like Bharavi, mitancha sarancha vachohi vagmita, he says. For example, I have taken this from Bharavi's Kiratarjuni, wherein um, a reporter to means his one of the spies, one can say, Vanechara. He comes and speaks in front of Yudhishthira regarding how Hastinavati is running under the kingship of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. Before presenting his ideas, that reporter speaks of how the conversation should be, how the communication should be. If you look into the last portion of this versification from Bhartrahari's Kiratarjuniya, Hitam Manoharicha Durlabham Vachaha, he says, for a king, there are not many uh, uh, who speak actual things, because everybody wants to please the king. While pleasing the king, they may forget to tell the truth. But it is only Hitam Manohari, uh, speech which is hitam, which is good, in its parinama, which is good, and then manohar, which is attractive. Only these kind of truth one should, this kind of speech one should maintain. He also says mitancha sarancha vachohi vagmita. What does it mean to be a good communicator? For that, Bharavi says mitancha saram, limited, and then saram, it should be full of meaning. It is pregnant with meaning. Such speech is venerated or revered. So these ideas of ideal speech can be culled out from various sources of Indian literature. So then comes to dialogue. Most of the major works of India are formed or formulated in the form of dialogue, because we believed in this idea, churning of thoughts, because bhutsu katha, the the conversation or the communication that takes place in order to understand the tattva, the core truth. And for that, one has to go for Vada and Tarka works, I mean, Darshana works, or maybe works like Vyakarana, and Kavya Shastra, not Kavyas, but Kavya Shastra. They are based on this idea of discourse, Purva Paksha and Siddhanta. There will be a Purva Paksha and then a Siddhanta. All philosophical differences were debated upon. Even today, this is what Indians believe. We believe in Tarka and Vada. Of course, in the history, it has hit us back very badly. Um, Most of the bloody chapters of Indian history is because we did not understand whether Tarka and Vada works for the barbarians or not. We thought Tarka and Vada should suffice to solve the differences, to mitigate the differences. But in the past, it did not work. But still, even today, largely the Indian approach is on Vada and Tarka, and civilized methods of setting the issues. That is why, in order to resolve the problems, in order to solve the problems, in order to mitigate the differences, we do not, we have today the court of law. And the court of law, it believes in Vada. I mean, the communicating ideas from two ends and finally churning it, Tarka, and then coming to conclusion. And then the other method is dialogue. See, if you look into Mahabhashya, there's a commentary on the works or the aphorisms of Panini, which comes in the era of first century BCE or second century BCE. Entire work even today in is very bulky, though most of the portions of Mahabharata are not, Mahabhashya are not available today, but available Mahabhashya itself is very bulky, voluminous. Entire work is all about dialogue, the dialogue between the Shishya and Guru. Patanjali is Guru over there, and he has a conversation between Guru and Shishyas. Or if you look into the Balakanda of Valmiki, best example of great communicator we come across, that is Vishwamitra, who tells stories to these two kids, Rama and Lakshmana. And then one of the major schools of, one of the major sources of Indian philosophy, that is Gita, of communication. It is largely discourses and dialogue. And ultimately, it is language, communication, and speech. They are termed and they are coined into a philosophy. This is the unique contribution of India. There is no other civilization which has taught language at this level and communication at this level. This is an entire school of philosophy which is called Shabda Siddhanta or Shabda Tattva, which is elaborated by Bhartrhari in 6th century Common Era. It is not created by him. He is also a part of great parampara. In the parampara, earlier masters had already produced ideas on Sphota Siddhanta and the Siddhanta of Vakyapadiya. I mean, it was already present, but Bhartrhari gave beautiful shape to it and he presented in a very effective manner. Thus, Shabda Darshana or Vyakarana Darshana came into being. So, with this, I conclude my presentation. If there are any questions, the forum is open for questions. Dhanyavad.
Dhanyavad, Naveen ji. Am I audible, Naveen Bhat? Naveen Bhat, can you hear me?
You're audible now.
Yeah, I think Naveen Bhat is not responding. I mean, am I audible, sir? Can you hear me?
And now I can hear you. In between, there was lackage of some.
Yeah. So the session is now open for Q&A. I have a couple of questions. I will take it the way it's questioned. First, I would like to uh, ask Ravi Bhushan ji. You have a question? One second. I will unmute him.
Ma'am, the questions will be in the chat box. You can read out the name of the person asking the question and read the question out to Sir, ma'am. That would be better, ma'am.
Yeah, I have got the question in the question box, but Bhagya ma'am, I'm not clear about what Ravi Bhushan ji is speaking here. So I have unmuted him. I would request Ravi Bhushan ji to ask the question.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Are you listening, sir?
Yes, yes. Yeah, good evening, please.
Sir, yes, actually, sir, you explaining very well, but I think any proper specific identity of Sanatana, sir. If I meet any person, how can find he is Sanatana or not Sanatana, sir? Can you explain, sir?
I, I don't think it comes in the scope of today's discussion. I mean, there are no physical features, with which or through which we can identify somebody as Sanatani, because the physical appearances can be artificially made. For example, if I say a Shikhadari is Sanatani or a Namadhari or a Bhasma Tripuntadari is a Sanatani, anybody can make it. But of course, when you speak to them through the conversation based on their worldview, perhaps you can make. When I say Sanatani, it is not necessarily he is the follower of any particular philosophical school of Sanatana, but if he is maintaining a worldview that goes well with Sanatana, he is Sanatana, because Sanatana on its own is not a religion. It is not by believing a book or by believing a god, I mean, the god, or believing in doctrines, the worldview that one maintains. So through conversation, one can find out whether he or she falls into the category of Sanatana or non-Sanatana.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Naveen ji. The next question is about how we can make the present day youth realize all these
Hmm.
aspects of education. Dr. Shashikant Kurodi sir is asking this question.
Into academics for long, we have faced various kinds of questions in dealing with this issue of how to make younger generation aware of these facts, and also how to make them appreciate Indic things. One practical solution that always I emphasize on is, let them have an overall idea of what India is at the elementary level. When they go to their higher primary school and in high school, let them know the ontology of India, ontology of Indic civilization. I mean, what are the contents are there in Bharat? No explanation needed at that level. But when they arrive at university, it is the onus of university professors to give them a perspective. Especially, for example, this all happens in humanities classrooms. Humanities not necessarily the subjects which are identified as humanities. Even IKS we often speak of, that is also humanities subject. Humanities is the subject that humans have worked for throughout their civilization, because it creates worldview for them. And the life is all about our worldview and our perception. It is the world around is how you are trained to perceive the world around, and that training comes from humanities. So at the university level, once they are familiar with the ontology of Indic civilization, at the university level, let them get the perspectives, how to look at Bharat, how to look at India. These efforts very systematically one has, I mean, we have to devise this with the existing system. It is not so assuring. We'll have to develop our own. For that, we have to spend huge amount of money and resources on humanities, which India is very bad at. As of now, our focus is largely on tech, which is not bad. Of course, tech is required, and that tech is the way. But then, if not for humanities, no civilization can survive. Governments and education is the state subject. State governments and central governments should think of spending, I mean, or investing resources and money into the domain of humanities. And India has to do a lot for its own Indic humanities. So this is the way forward. That is what I feel as an academician.
Thank you, Naveen ji. The next question is from Dr. Satvik. He asks, how is managerial communication linked to the traditional aspect of communication?
How is managerial communication is linked to traditional phase?
Yes.
Um, this perhaps requires some more emphasis on managerial communication. For that, we'll have to look into the case studies of particular works. For example, Sundarakanda. He, of course, he was not a manager, but he was executing the task which was assigned to him. When he was in Sri Lanka in search of Sita, with great difficulty he found Sita. But before speaking to Sita, he thinks a lot. Can I speak in the normal Sanskrit language? Because the moment if I open up in Sanskrit, Sita would think it is Ravana's gameplay. He may be appearing in, because Ravana is a Maya Rupadhari, he is appearing in this form and trying to persuade me. So he thinks a lot, and he creates a particular way of communication. um, you know, the storytelling, of course. He recollects the stories which are told to him, that is of Dasharatha to Rama and to the abduction of Sita, and in a Madhura Vani, very audible, very you know, pellucid sound, he narrates the story. So for a manager also, there is a lesson to learn based on the situation. How can he or she formulate the speech and the mode of presentation? These kind of aspects we can bring in from Indic thoughts in the managerial sphere. That's what I feel.
Thank you, Naveen. The next question is from Suresha R. He asks, why Sanskrit is suffering despite all
Another,
the qualities while English
uh,
flourishes without any?
yeah. See, there are various reasons. If I take the political reason, see, the Kothari Commission proposed three language policy or Tribhasha Sutra. But because of various political pressure and reasons, most of the states, both of South India and North India, did not follow it to the core. North Indians, they were, I mean, Hindi was anyway their language. I mean, at least their languages were linked to Hindi. And then English, of course, it's so called, you know, heightened this thing is there with English, that it is a word was open for them. They chose Sanskrit. South India, when it comes, Hindi was again to be taught because our languages are not linked to Hindi. Ours are completely different family of language, Dravidian family of language. So our Matrabhasha is Dravidian language. Hindi is, by that time, it was proposed to be national language. It is not in reality. The third one is English, but many of the states they refused it. And in between, in this jagda, Sanskrit could not find a room. Ultimately, we got NEP 2020. Unfortunately, NEP 2020 also does not speak exclusively for Sanskrit. There is no dedicated room for Sanskrit in NEP 2020 also. Uh, this could have been done, that government of India at least today in the modern era, when the Indian languages are struggling to come up with the suitable words for various tech related words. You know, if you take the example of Kannada, if an article to be written in Kannada on technology, you know, 40-50% of English terms they would use. There is no parallel Kannada word. We have not thought that Indian languages can create their own terms for these technical terms and words from our own language, especially from Sanskrit. These efforts are, in isolated manner, which are done. There is something called a commission for technical terms in India, which is operative since 1960s, if I'm not wrong, and they have produced n number of books. Largely, they were using, taking Sanskrit. They coined the terms in Indian languages, broadly in Hindi. It was not popularized that much. Today, there is digital footprint for Sanskrit, and if you compare the literature that is available in Kannada and Sanskrit online, perhaps Sanskrit is in large accessible, and navigation through text is also very easy in Sanskrit. In that manner, we are ahead of Kannada. I mean, Sanskrit is ahead of Kannada. But of course, it is not only Sanskrit which is backlashed by English, but Indian languages largely. And when you say emphasis should be on Indian languages, and Sanskrit is one of the Indian languages, along with Sanskrit, all other Indian languages, the dying languages, should be revived. If not for languages, there is no meaning in reviving Indic thoughts, because Indic thoughts can be expressed only through, in complete manner, only through Indian languages.
Thank you, Naveen ji.
Yeah.
There is another question from Ms. Jayalakshmi. She is asking about the other name of Saraswati, which is called Vritragni, and she wants to know about the history of that name.
What it
Am
is?
I spelling it right? Vritragni. It is in
I,
the
I did not get that term.
that is what she has mentioned in the question. I will unmute her if she can elaborate on her question.
Yeah.
Give.
Are you it's about the history? I'm sorry. I'm afraid I cannot give an answer for this Rutragni. Though I know, I mean, if you split that Rutra and Agni, there can be some linkage between this Rutrasura and, but I'm not sure. There is a story that because of this some modification done in the mantra, um, Vritrasura was performing one yajna in order to get a son who can defeat Indra. But while performing yajna, there was a slight modification done in the mantra. So the mantra went wrong and the meaning also went wrong. Instead of getting a son who can defeat Indra, he begot a son who was defeated later by Indra. This story may be linked with this term, but I'm completely new to it. That Saraswati is called Utragni. I'm not aware of it.
Okay, Naveen ji. Uh, the next question. I
That must
think
be Vritragni.
Vritragni.
Vritra Vatrasura, one who has.
I think Mr. Iyer, who is in the participant list here, wants to ask a question. You can ask the question, Mr.
Thank you, Mahodaya. A very excellent
Yes.
presentation of the influence of the language in speaking communication.
Dhanyavad.
Now, I am referring to a book I read long time back. The title of the book is Geography of Thoughts. It is authored by an American professor who was leading Chinese students on linguistics, leading the award of PhD in linguistics and philosophy. Now, he brings out an interesting point. The Western culture and civilization is based on Greek philosophy. That is public speaking, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and all these things, where individual is the prominent. Individual makes the difference. Whereas the Eastern part, culture and civilization, is based on agriculture, where cooperative movement is important. And this reflects in our approach to life. You have something to comment on this?
That makes sense, clear sense. I mean, as at the very outset of today's speech, I referred to the worldviews. East and the West, they do differ, not because of their the worldview. So So, in order to understand these two cultures, we have to understand their worldview. As rightly said by the author whom you mentioned, that Indian life is largely about community life. All our activities, both economical activities or of our so-called religious activities, I don't want to use that term, but however, we do not have an equivalent term for that. All dharmic activities are community based, and entire life it lurks around community. So the sense of community is also very strong in India, and one of the greatest punishments that is suggested in most of the dharma shastra works is banishment from the community. If somebody is expelled from community, the life is gone. That was the understanding. So there was no room for individualism. And today, what is taking away, no, if you look into the basic causes for the depletion of the resources or global warming or whatever the consequences we are facing, is largely because of consumerism. And consumerism is rooted in individualistic ideas. So, if Indians do become individualistic like the Western people, then perhaps our families will collapse. Families collapse means the communities will collapse, and ultimately Indian society also will collapse. So we have to reframe the community idea, the idea of community life. It has to be reframed for the requirements of today's life. We cannot take it as it is in our texts, but we'll have to rework on it. Of course, that is one of the major worldviews that defines India, the community's consciousness. That is true.
Thank you, Naveen.
Yeah.
I would like to ask Dr. Swarnim, do you have any questions? You have raised your hand. You can unmute yourself and talk, Dr. Swarnim. I don't think she's there. Dr. Bhagya, you have any question, you can please ask. Dr. Bhagya, are you there? Okay. Seems like there are no more questions. Okay.
Is someone speaking? I'm not hearing anyone.
No, I'm just waiting for people who have raised their hands. I don't know if they have a question or it was by mistake. I'm trying to connect with them.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Iyer?
So thank you very much. I
Your
want to
question.
ask you one. Yeah. See, I am attending some programs on the basic Sanskrit and some Vedic studies and everything. Now I am stuck with some issues. Good books are not available. To quote an example, Achidram, Ashwamedham, Ketakam, Aruna Prasnam, Taitriya Brahmanam. These things, books with Padachedam, Padartham, Anvayam, and Bhavardham. I have been seeking with many of the organizations, but these books are not available. Can you put in the WhatsApp some people I can contact for these books?
Just one clarity: you are not getting books for the meaning of Vedic mantras or the classical Sanskrit. What's
No,
the query here?
it is Vedic mantras like Achidram, Ashwamedham, Ketakam, Aruna Prasnam, Taitriya Brahmanam. These things I am chanting, people are teaching us, like Kaswaram, Udatam, Anudatam, and all these optional sandhis and everything. But they also say if you go wrong in Swaram, then you make a mistake in the understanding and meaning. Now, I was asking books where it gives Patachedam, Padartham, Anvayam, Bhavartham, these things, so that I can take better interest of what is being taught and parayana. Now, I have been pursuing with some people.
Yeah, sure.
They said, no. Can you put in the WhatsApp some organization who have got these books I can buy?
Yeah, I'll have to search for them, because for Sanskrit literature or classical Sanskrit, there are organizations, there are programs, and there are books available for teaching and learning process. But for Vedic, I personally have not Padacheda and Padapadartha meaning Bhaga, the and Sai North Indian publishers have done efforts to put it in Hindi as well. But there also you do
Not able to hear.
Naveen ji, you're not audible.
That's it. I told that such books I have not come across, but for Sayana Bhasha and Uvata Bhasha, there are books, but not at Pada Padartha level.
Thank you, Naveen ji. Thank you. On behalf of everyone present here, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Naveen Bhat for this enlightening lecture. His words beautifully highlighted how communication in the Indian tradition goes beyond mere exchange of information. It has a deeper sense of truth and understanding, especially expressions like Anuvada, Pada, Pashyanti, Madhyama, and Vaikari. I'm sure many of us would not have known about it at all. So we sincerely thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. I also would like to thank ICFAI for joining hands with us for this Navratri lecture series. Thank you, Naveen Bhat.
Thank you. Namaskaram to one and all.